You don't need some bloke off the internet to tell you that Arsenal haven't quite hit the heights of this season from a chance creation perspective. Though some people will tell you it's a bogus stat, usually when it doesn't favour them, Arsenal are 15th for big chances created so far this season, according to the Premier League, below Luton. If you don't think that's a stat worth listening to, then fine. But our non-penalty XG overall is at 1.36 per 90, down from 1.82 last season. Our goals are at 1.89 per 90, down from 2.21 per 90 in 22-23. And we're having 4.67 shots on target per 90 so far this season, down from 5.11, all in the league. Something has changed. In a recent press conference, James McNicholas from The Athletic asked Arteta if he sacrificed something in the attacking sense to become more defensively solid. And Mikel said this.
I just wondered, is that a deliberate shift of emphasis from you? And is that something you considered in the summer, trying to be more solid, more structured and focus on the defensive side?
I want to concede nothing and create a lot. So that is not planned for sure.
Despite our out-of-possession game looking really solid at the minute, especially against the likes of Man City and hanging on for dear life against Sevilla, Mikel is telling us that the balance of the team isn't quite what he's after. This is a long season, and conceding less and pacing ourselves would definitely have been part of the plan, but maybe the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction. And as we enter November, we can begin to argue that this is a pattern, not an outlier. Even in our win over Sevilla, we looked clunky in the final third, with consistently late or mistimed arrivals and actions, disconnected play, and several players looking like they're lacking cohesion. However, I've covered extensively at the beginning of this season what I think is going wrong on our end, but as the guys on the brilliant Arsenal Vision podcast say, other teams get to do tactics too. And they're doing something specific that I don't think has been picked up yet in the mainstream. I want to start with a caveat. Everything I say should come with a subtitle, in some situations. There's a tendency of football analysis to oversimplify for the sake of clarity, which I've been guilty of in the past, but take the idea that Arsenal play in a 3-2 in build-up shape. They do, but only in certain phases and areas of the pitch. At times, Zinchenko pulls wide, as he's done a lot more this season, as you can see from his heat maps. At times, Raya is almost the third centre-back. At times, it's a 2 with both fullbacks high. It just depends on the situation and how the opposition are pressing and how we want to play. With that said and out the way, there's something teams are doing more against us that's making it harder for us to play. And it's happening in our first phase, when we're closer to goal. The idea of the inverted fullback is pretty simple and is explained well by Zinchenko in this video with Rio Ferdinand. You're trying to create a dilemma for your opposition winger. Do you go inside and track your man, which opens up space for your centre-back to carry and combine, or do you leave him inside, which means the fullback is now free to receive between the lines and overload the midfield? Most teams don't do it because it relies on the belief that your centre-backs will hold onto the ball and be press resistant at the very highest level against the best players as they're now more exposed, which ours do well, and was why we didn't do it until Saliba arrived, in my view. Last year, it really worked for us. Again, he wasn't always inside, but when Zinchenko did go in there, we were scything teams open either from central overloads or matching them up, but with superior technicality in the central areas. However, last season, the responsibility to track Zinchenko often fell to the opposition's right winger. A few examples here from last season. Elise tracking Zinchenko inside, and Richarlison playing at right wing too. You can see the spaces on the outside for Gabriel to carry, or for Martinelli to drop into the pocket and run, and it was really working. But now, the responsibility for other teams in terms of who picks up our fullback inside is much more interchangeable because teams have changed the way they press against us. The opposition are playing a lot more with a 2 in their first line of their press, whose primary job is to stop the entry pass inside from the centre-backs to the pivot. You can see that in our last 3 games before Sevilla. Different heights, but there's a clear 2 from City, Chelsea, and the French team who, no matter how many times you tell me, I will get their name wrong. Now when Zinchenko comes inside into the pivot, the responsibility for who is tracking him is changing from the winger to the 2 players who are protecting the pivot more often. If you look carefully, you can even see them talking about it in game. Go and have a look at Sterling and Palmer in the Chelsea game. Crucially, this means the winger can stay outside and the wide area is still covered, but Zinchenko is still man-marked. It reduces his effectiveness and is one of the many reasons we're struggling to access more dangerous zones on the pitch. Take this situation against Chelsea, it's a perfect example. Zinchenko's come inside, but Cole Palmer is now responsible for him as he's entered his zone, not Sterling. Maybe last season that run would have dragged Sterling inside a bit more to give that space for Gabriel, or conversely, Zinchenko would have been free. But now Pochettino is splitting the responsibility between Palmer and Sterling, depending on the situation. It requires more thinking and concentration for the opposition, but it is or has been more effective at stopping that ball into Zinchenko and therefore us playing through the centre. The simple way of saying it is it's less man-to-man, more zonal. So why didn't teams do this before? Well, they did, especially towards the end of last season, which is partly how it got worked out, just less often. But also, from an opposition perspective, this approach means there's less opportunity to spring forward quickly, and you do give up spaces in other areas of the pitch and give us more time on the ball, which we'll come to later. But they're taking their chances with a more conservative approach against us. They're happy for us to take the wide areas and are preparing to get out to us quickly when it does go there. And broadly, it's working. However, further than that, now to get our pivot players on the ball, we're more often than not having to step outside of the opposition's shape, as the two we're so often coming up against are blocking that access. You'll see it happening time and time again, no matter who's in our pivot, which does change. Rice, Jorginho, Partey, Zinchenko, Odegaard, it's always rotating, but whoever it is having to drop to create angles to get around that fairly usual discipline 2 from the opposition. The problem with that, though, is you suck players deeper. Once you come out of the shape, you turn and you look to progress, but there's only your pivot partner inside and central, usually surrounded by 3 to 4 opposition players. So we're having to go around the sides more often, and the U-shape returns. How do we fix that then? This, but also the whole chance creation debacle. Well, there's loads of possible answers to that, but I want to give you 2 ideas that I haven't necessarily said on this channel yet. On co-coms against Sevilla for TNT Sports was Lucy Ward, who I think is consistently fantastic. And at one point she said, it's important teams know when to put the ball at risk, which I think is a fantastic phrase. At the minute, despite the small structural tweaks stopping them playing, teams block in the middle and so on, I still don't think this Arsenal team are being brave enough to break the lines or show their personality on the ball. They're not clear on when it's appropriate to put the ball at risk. I have a video coming later in the week expanding on this, but I do think the likes of Saliba, Gabriel, Odegaard and Jorginho are being far too safe at the moment, and I have a theory why. I'm also keen to see us take different approaches to getting the ball forward. I don't think we make as much use of the switch as we could. We're at 2.33 switches per 90 this season, which is down from last year and exactly half Man City's total last year, and I think pulling Declan Rice back from the 8 to the 6 may help that. I'm still keen to see Havertz at 9 more often too as a different option to be a target to hit, and maybe we will if Jesus is out. You can go through, round or over teams, and you shouldn't be a football purist in my view. In the end, if it isn't working in the most beautiful Arsene Wenger goal against Norwich way, if you're not getting the central access, make it happen another way. I also loved Mikel's idea to try and fix it against Sevilla, because let's be clear, it's not that I think I know this and Mikel doesn't. He does know this. What he did was he put Tomiyasu on more of an angle, giving a reliable outball for the pivot players. It's more risky and you don't occupy the central zones as much, but you can then at least drive into them, as we saw Tomiyasu doing. Maybe that will be a theme in the upcoming weeks as we try and fix this. I have to say, this isn't all my own work. Rohan Jivan, brilliant analyst who you should follow on X at RJArsenalBlog, pointed out the tweak to me initially on The Rewatch, which is a show you can get if you're a TDK member on Patreon or YouTube. You can also get bonus video essays, bonus content, tactical breakdowns, loads of stuff. Check it out for £3 a month, and there's a free trial on Patreon. If you don't like it, you can cancel. I asked the question earlier, how do we fix this? And I'm probably being a bit dramatic there, aren't I? Nothing is broken. It's just tweaks. We aren't as fun to watch this year, and maybe that's fine at the minute. We all wanted adaptation, different ways of playing, to pace ourselves this year, and now doing that, and we're getting results with it, but we don't like it. Arsenal are top in the Champions League group, haven't lost yet in the league, and we played harder fixtures than those above us, in my view. We need to take a breath, a step back our players, yes, even him, and focus on what we can control, because Mikel certainly will. This is foreshadowing for my next video, see you there. If you like The Different Knock and want to see more, you can access our bonus content on Patreon and YouTube memberships for just £3 a month.